All right, so there's trade buzz rumors going around, and we are talking about them here because why not? Like, we're sitting in that window where the NFL draft is yet to be upon us, and why don't we just talk some trades? Let's talk a little trades. And there's one guy that's out there where they keep talking about how a deal's going to be done. They keep talking about how a deal's going to be done, but they also keep talking about how a trade may be done. And this is a guy that is in very recent memory of being very painful for the Detroit Lions, and you're going to see a picture of it here. But here's my question. If Brandon Aiyuk is actually available for the Detroit Lions, would you want him? That's the question I want to ask. If Brandon Aiyuk was available for the Detroit Lions, would you want him, and what would you be willing to pay? Would you be willing to part with our first-round pick plus a little bit more? There's a trade scenario that is out there. You can use trade machines and things like that, and I'm going to give you some of the, how do I want to put this, finer details on what this trade would look like, and at the end, I will give you my opinion. Maybe not even at the end, but I will give you my opinion on if I think the Detroit Lions should trade for Brandon Aiyuk. So before we get too much further into it, if you have yet to do it, we're pushing for 20,000 subs. Hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you as part of the community. And once again, this year, NFL Draft Live, hang with us. Do it with us. Why not? We would love to have you with us for the NFL Draft and just talking Detroit Lions and every other team. Honestly, we want to have you around. So, anyways, here you go. The Detroit Lions 49ers trade that would shut down the NFC title race. This is one reason why I don't think it'll actually happen. I don't know why the 49ers would take the team that was the biggest threat to them in their Super Bowl run, or run to the Super Bowl. Let me make sure I say that correctly. And I don't think they would give him to us. I just don't. And I just realized that this mic's really loud. There you go. All right. So I kept seeing a red line. And I'm like, oh no, I'm too loud. All right. So anyways, here's what the trade is. I can highlight it for you. Okay. The Lions would receive wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk and a 2024 fourth round pick. That's pick number 132. They would give up to the 49ers a first round pick, number 29, a fifth, and a seventh. In other words, this trade is valued, Brandon Aiyuk is valued at just under a first-round pick, like an early second-round pick in this trade. Do I think that's an accurate depiction of who he is? I do, and I think it has to be to the right team. I think if Aiyuk was going to be traded, he may have already, been traded to the Houston Texans, who ended up getting Diggs. I think Aiyuk would have made a little more sense for them in their window, but they ended up going for the Diggs trade. So now that you've seen what the trade proposed is, do you still like it? I've also seen Brandon Aiyuk for a second and a fifth rounder. I like that one more personally, but let's go from there. All right, so here's what I like to do. Here's what I always like to do. I like to pull up stats. I like to figure out, okay, what has he been and what has his QB rating been? Last year, he had 75 catches on 101 targets. You can do the math. It's basically just under 75% completion percentage when throwing to Aiyuk. It's phenomenal. All right, he had 1,342 yards and 7 touchdowns. Maybe the only issue is that they didn't throw him the ball enough, if I can be completely honest, because there are so many mouths to feed over in San Francisco. He would have the same type of situation here in Detroit. Passer rating when targeted, all right, was 127. The year before that, he had 78 catches, 118 passer rating when targeted. The year before that, 56 catches, 119 passer rating when targeted. All right, that's the last 3 years. He has been a monster when it comes to people targeting him. He's not a bad athlete, but it's not like he's a ridiculous athlete either. Coming out in the NFL Combine, he had an 8.44. His vert and broad jump, in other words, his explosion was elite. His size is okay, even though he seems bigger. And his speed was good. He's a 4.5 guy, not a 4.4 guy. He's a 4.5 guy. So all that stuff kind of checks out. But here's the conversation that I want to have. If we have Brandon Aiyuk, if we trade for Aiyuk, you can almost guarantee that that means that St. Brown isn't coming back. Like, I don't see a world where we can afford to spend between 25 and 30 million on Aiyuk and St. Brown. I just don't see it. And continue to keep Goff. If we bring Brandon Aiyuk in, that's saying like, and we keep St. Brown and we keep Williams, do we have the best receiving core in the league? Yes. Yes, we do. But also, we can't afford that going forward and continue to pay the other guys. So one of two things has to happen. Either a guy like St. Brown has got to go. Taylor Decker has got to go. He may have to go anyway. All right? How do you then have the money to re-sign Aleem McNeil and continue to pay Reeder and continue to pay like Davis? Like, it's not there. And so, and Goff. So either like a guy like St. Brown has to go or Goff would have to go. I don't see the numbers adding up. I just don't see the numbers adding up. And so that is why I'm wondering, like, yeah, he's due, what's the number I saw? 14 million this year. Can absolutely afford him this year. It's after this year that I don't know what to do. And if you're going to trade with him, it has to come with a contract extension. It just does. So when you're asking me, do I want to trade for him? I hate saying this because he's so good. I don't. And I also think if you're going to use that 29th pick and what you've realized is you need a wide receiver, I think there are wide receivers in this draft class that will be there at number 29 that can be cheaper for the next 5 years. 5 years. That's a long time to have a cheap wide receiver. All right? That is a guy who is going to make not a ton of money and for the next 4 and then a little bit of money on the 5th, and that's it. That's what Aiyuk is. Brandon Aiyuk was drafted with the 25th pick in the first round. And now he's on the 5th year of that contract, going into the 5th year, and he's getting $14 million. All right, I don't know what it's slotted as is the amount of million per year, but it's probably somewhere in the $4 or $5 million range per year for number 29. I should look into that. I should know that. But and maybe while I'm talking to you, I will look it up. But I think going out and getting someone else like an Adonai Mitchell, why not do that? All right, maybe Brian Thomas falls to you. Maybe you decided to go Worthy, right? And you just have the fastest receiving core in the league. You have two guys that are the two fastest receivers in the league outside of Tyreek Hill with J-Mo and Worthy, and then you just have the technicians in the middle with Laporte and St. Brown. Like maybe that's what you want to do. If you want to go offensive juggernaut at the wide receiver position, I think you can accomplish that through the draft. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then kind of go from there. So, so the salary range for the first round is $12 million to $34 million. So that would mean that $12.1 million is over 4 years. So it's not that big of a deal. It's like somewhere around $4 million. Like that's not much. It's just not much. So yeah, Detroit is picking $12.919 million is what it is, and with a signing bonus of $6 million. So the cap hit this year would only be $2.348 million. That's a little cheaper than Aiyuk going forward. And I know that the draft isn't one of those things where you're sitting there, and I'll show you what I was looking at. I was looking at this through SpoTrack. Here we are. Or Spot Track. And here's what I'm saying. I understand that that's not the sure thing that Aiyuk is, but here's one thing that I think people often mistake. People think that when you're getting a player through free agency, that it is guaranteed, and with the draft, it's up for grabs. I don't see it that way. I just don't see it that way. I think the NFL draft and free agency, we've seen plenty of free agents bust in Detroit. We've seen it happen. Cam Sutton. Hello. All right. How was that? How was Flowers? Did you guys enjoy him while he was here? Like, what about all the corners that we've had that haven't worked over the last 5 or 6 years, where we're trying to get guys that are still somewhat solid players? It's not a guarantee. Now, Aiyuk is phenomenal. He's been in a phenomenal system loaded with other weapons. With Aiyuk, the last year and a half, now he's been good for all 4 years, especially the last 3. But with Aiyuk, like his skill, when he was on the field, it wasn't until late last year that he may have started to have teams zone in on him. But people are looking at McCaffrey and they're looking at Debo. Sometimes even Kittle before him. And I know you could say we have the same thing here with Gibbs and St. Brown and Laporta. I understand that. It would be very successful for him. It would be very successful for him. And do I think it would make us a Super Bowl favorite this year? I do. But I think if we go out and spend the same type of draft pick in the NFL draft and we get a guy that can plug into this system and become a really good wide receiver for us, all right, it elongates our Super Bowl window to 4 or 5 years. Because as much as I love the idea of Aiyuk in a Lions uniform, and he would look good in a Lions uniform. And by the way, if we trade for him, I'm not going to be mad. It's just, if I had to choose one way or the other, I'd say, no, don't do it. But it would allow us, I mean, if we kept him, if we kept him, we would be having to get rid of multiple other players after this year. This year, we could stay intact. But then after that, it would be multiple players. So anyways, there's my opinion on it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. See you on the next one.